6 Doiz, 6 teams. Can one of us end up a Super Bowl champion? Hello and welcome to another Doiz Gaming video. Today we're going to see if any of us Doiz are able to lead our respective NFL teams to a Super Bowl victory. Some teams have many Super Bowl wins already. Some teams have never even made the Super Bowl. And some teams are the Cincinnati Bengals. So, to begin this video, I recreated each one of the Doiz in Madden 25 and put them on their respective teams. Now, they don't really look like the Doiz because the character customization in Madden is fucking booty cheeks. Anyway, I based everyone off how I think they'd perform on the big stage. So let's have a look at each of our players. Sam is a dual threat quarterback who will run around a fucker before tossing a deep piss missile for a tutty. He is more of a, how you say, Michael Vick type quarterback. You know, on the field, not off the field, on the field. Hamish is an accurate quarterback who can drop dimes on all of you fools. However, if you apply constant pressure, he will crack like the mental midget he is. I'm thinking more of like a Matt Ryan Super Bowl type beat here. Brad is a solid QB. He's not going to be running anywhere. But this doesn't mean that you'll be able to easily sack him in the pocket, as he is a fortress. He will not go down. And since his running stats are so low, his passing power and accuracy are near perfect. Just think of him as a bigger Tom Brady. Tom and Kane are actually quite similar to Brad in a way. Tom won't be running a lot either, but if he does, just know he is going to be running through you, not around you. His biggest strength though is his deep balls. You need someone to throw a Hail Mary to Jeff Janis? Tom is your man. If you didn't get the reference there, he is based off of a Aaron Rodgers type beat. Kane is a weird case. The further away his players are, the more accurate his throws become. Furthermore, he's got that fancy footwork to dazzle his way to the end zone. And while originally I was going to liken him to a Josh Allen type person, I think Anthony Richardson, who can throw a fucking 60-yard bomb to Alec Pierce but can't throw a slant, is a better representation of Kane here. And finally, we have Brooke. While he does have the ability to run, he prefers the safety of the pocket, making his way down the field with his perfect short accuracy passing. Kind of almost a Bo Nix, if you would. Now, you might be wondering, hey Brooke, you're a Browns fan. I can say that now. The evil man died today. Why are you controlling the Bengals in this franchise? Well, out of all of the starting QBs, 5 of the Doiz are better than their team starting QB. The only one who isn't is Brad, because he's got to deal with Joe Burrow. So I will be controlling the Bengals and making sure that Brad is the starter each week. Nothing can go wrong here. Foreshadowing is a literary device where the user... Alrighty, so after all of the preseason nonsense has been and gone, we are thrust into week 1. Thankfully, I know that at least one of the Doiz will start with a win, as the Bengals and Patriots are playing each other. But let's see how everyone went. Week 1. Sam is the first Doiz to record a win, tossing 4 touchdowns to Brad's 1 in the 31-24 victory. Brooke puts up Deshaun Watson-like stats. Legitimately, these are almost identical to his week 1 stats, which scares me, because this was recorded before the NFL season began, and ended up losing 49-17. Kane, trailing 20-7, comes from behind and leads the Lions to a 24-23 victory. Tom flips the script on the Eagles. Instead of losing like Jordan Love did, he throws 2 touchdowns, rushes in a third, and leads the Packers to a 35-21 victory. Hamish has an easy week 1 game, per se, taking on the Carolina Panthers. He only needed to throw 1 touchdown for the victory here. Week 2. Another big loss for Brooke and the Browns here, going down 37-16. You knew things were going bad when Brooke was the leading rusher for the team. And before you ask, no real-life injuries are turned off, so Nick Chubb is the running back, not Jerome Ford or Donta Foreman or Pierre Strong Jr. or Nyheim Hines or anyone really. It's Nick Chubb, number one. In a low-scoring affair, Kane is the first Doiz to go to overtime. Unfortunately for Kane, the Buccaneers won the coin flip, marched down the field, and nailed a field goal for the victory. Tom has another good game, tossing 3 more touchdowns and rushing in yet another one in a 27-21 win over the Colts. In another game decided by just a field goal, Sam narrowly loses to the Seahawks 21-18. Unlike real life, them boys are now 2-0 after Dak throws a nearly perfect game whilst Hamish gets sacked 5 times in a 42-17 blowout. As for the Bengals, it seems that Brad was a game time scratch. Don't worry, Joe Burrow did Joe Burrow things, not only losing one of the first 2 games of the season, but also losing to the Chiefs. Unrelated, the Bengals now have a new punter, Joe Burrow. Week 3. In a shootout similar to the real-life game, Brad and Jaden Daniels throw a combined 7 touchdowns as the Bengals get their first win, 31-28. This also went to overtime, with Evan McPherson kicking the winning field goal this time. The Browns also get their first win, with 3 touchdowns being scored in the first quarter alone. Brooke leads his team to the 35-7 victory. Bouncing back from last week's loss, Kane lets his running backs run loose, with Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery and Sione Vaki scoring in the 27-20 win. In his first appearance this franchise mode, Will Levis, the Mayonnaise Menace, balled out against Tom, dropping 42 points whilst Tom could only muster 14. The Packers might have lost, but don't worry, Aaron Rodgers won. In a low-scoring 21-14 victory over the Patriots, Sam didn't throw any interceptions, but he just didn't throw any touchdowns either. And finally, another rough day for Jimmy, going down 23-9 against the Eagles, taking 4 more sacks in this loss. Week 4. Even though his dad, Andy Dalton, wasn't playing, this game was still close, with Brad eking out a 26-24 victory, tossing 2 TDs during the game. Brooke didn't need to do much in his 31-23 victory over the Raiders, as Gardner Minshew gave up not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 interceptions. But hey, at least Brooke ran in a touchdown. Before their bye, Kane knocked off the Seahawks 24-14, almost mirroring Jared Goff's perfect game in real life, hitting 22 of his 23 attempts. Obviously that one attempt that was missed by him probably should have been made by like Amon-Ra St. Brown, consistency game. I thought you're supposed to be like real life. Tom's loss to the Vikings 28-20 wasn't against Sam Darnold. It wasn't against JJ McCarthy either. It seems that during the preseason, the Vikings made a trade with the Jags to acquire the services of one Trevor Lawrence. Why were the Jags able to send Trevor Lawrence away? Well, they had traded with the Packers for Tom's backup, Jordan Love. So now we have the Vikings led by Trevor Lawrence, the Jags led by Jordan Love, and the Packers led by Tom. And while both QBs in this game did toss 2 touchdowns, it was the Vikings' run game which proved the difference, as Josh Jacobs for the Packers could only muster 50 yards from 15 attempts. Whenever one team scored a touchdown, the other responded in kind. Back and forth this game went, until a costly pick from Sam led to the 49ers scoring their 5th touchdown and taking home the win in a 36-28 bout. It is 4th down. The Falcons are trailing by 4. Kirk Cousins doesn't care. He nails the completion, continues down the field, and scores a walk-off touchdown to defeat Hamish and the Saints 21-17. While Hamish did throw for 236 yards, he was unable to find any of his receivers in the end zone, tossing 0 touchdowns. Week 5. Despite a Derrick Henry rushing masterclass, This was another Big Dick Brad game, as he tossed 4 touchdowns in the 34-31 win against the Ravens. A minor injury to Nick Chubb meant that Jerome Ford and Donta Foreman were the starting running backs for the Browns today, and despite 106 rushing yards and a touchdown from them, the loss of Chubb really meant that the Browns were missing a spark, and they ended up losing to the Commies 23-20. Over 400 yards of offense from Green Bay in a 31-21 win against the Rams. Tom tossed 3 touchdowns and completed over 80% of his passes, and as a redemption from last week, Josh Jacobs cracked 100 yards for the game. Sam had a passer rating of 132. He threw 3 touchdowns. He threw no interceptions, and it still wasn't enough, as Tua Tagovailoa had a perfect passer rating, leading the Dolphins to a 35-21 win. And Hamish was taking on Patrick Mahomes, so as expected, did not come out on top. He did throw for 2 touchdowns and over 200 yards, but Mahomes was inevitable. Week 6. When your opponent can only muster 9 points, you know you don't really need to do that much. And yet Brad still went out there, tossing over 200 yards and even rushing in his own touchdown in a 21-9 win against the Giants. Brooke and Jalen Hurts weren't too different stats-wise, but another game without Nick Chubb hurt the running game, and when your opposition has Saquon Barkley, it's not a surprise that the Browns lost 38-7. The rest from the bye week did not help the Lions, as despite a Jahmyr Gibbs 2 touchdown game, they went down 21-14 to dem boys. Just a side note here, as I'm typing this, the Lions are currently up 37-9 in their game against the Cowboys. Tom overwhelmed the Cardinal defense here, throwing 4 touchdowns and getting the 31-21 dub. Meanwhile, the Texas D completely shut Sam down in the 35-7 loss. Finally, to stop the losing slide, Hamish pulled out an ugly 14-9 win over the Buccaneers. Week 7. In a game where both teams put up exactly 329 yards of offense, Brad managed to defeat Brooke in a 28-24 win. Brad dominated in the air, with 3 touchdowns for no picks, whereas Brooke threw 1 pick for no touchdowns. The ground game was where the Browns thrived, with a returning Nick Chubb, ironic, Donta Foreman, and Brooke himself scoring rushing touchdowns. Despite a late comeback, scoring 14 unanswered points, the Vikings could not defeat Kane's Lions, falling 7 points short in the 28-21 Lions win. Kane not only threw 2 touchdowns, but also rushed in a touchdown as well. Despite having a rough game for his standards, Tom came close to defeating the Texans, going down 26-22. Sam, meanwhile, he had a day. 3 touchdowns, 88% completion rate, 0 interceptions, a near-perfect passer rating, and a 21-13 win against the Jags. Hamish threw for 225 yards and 2 touchdowns. Bo Nix threw for 175 yards and 1 touchdown. Bo Nix did not get sacked. Hamish got sacked 7 times. The Broncos won 26-16. Week 8. In a close game, Brad and the Bengals lost to the Eagles. Worst of all, the Bengals led 21-13 heading into the 4th quarter, only to lose 28-24. Another classic Browns quarterbacking performance here from Brooke, throwing a pick and a touchdown in a 28-17 loss to the Ravens. The Mayonnaise menace could not overcome the Lions' defense, only managing 72 yards in the air in the 20-17 loss to the Lions. Kane threw for 240 yards, but also threw no touchdowns, relying on Jahmyr Gibbs and his legs to secure the W. In his revenge game, Jordan Love was leading 24-7 over the Packers. At the end of the 4th quarter, the Packers were on top, 28-24. Sam managed to outperform Aaron Rodgers, but couldn't help out in the run game, which led to a 21-17 loss. Hamish could only muster a single touchdown pass, but between a rushing touchdown from Jamal Williams, where he made 0 yards, legitimately, he had 1 rushing attempt for 0 yards and 1 touchdown, and a pick 6 from Justin Herbert led to the 21-13 win for the Saints. Week 9. In good news, the Bengals had a 21-10 lead against the Raiders at halftime. In even better news, the Raiders didn't score any touchdowns in the second half. In bad news, the Raiders won 22-21 after kicking 4 field goals whilst keeping the Bengals scoreless. The Browns not only outran the Chargers, but outthrew them as well. They also lost 24-19 as Brooke threw 2 ints to go with his 2 touchdown passes. In a spicy divisional matchup here, Tom took on Kane. At the end of the fourth quarter, Kane and the Lions had overcome a 28-7 deficit to make it 28-all, forcing overtime. Just like how most overtimes have gone so far, whoever wins the coin toss, wins. And sure enough, after winning the coin toss, Kane threw his 5th touchdown pass of the day, securing the win for the Lions, 34-28. The fucking mayonnaise menace strikes again. This time, it was a 23-0 drubbing of the Patriots. However, what didn't help was the injury to Sam during the game, early in the first quarter. After throwing an interception, Sam chased down the defender, only to suffer a dislocated collarbone and did not return, leading to Drake May taking over for the remainder of the game. He didn't really do much, not too bad. The Panthers might have came close, but Hamish and the Saints were too much, winning the game 24-23. Hey, at least we got to see Kendre Miller score today. Week 10. We begin with a close loss here for the Bengals, in the weirdest sounding game. I would fucking love watching this game, but I don't know what's going on here. Lamar Jackson threw 4 touchdowns to Brad's 1, but Charlie Jones scored on a jet sweep, followed by Chase Brown not only scoring a rushing touchdown, but then getting the octopus by converting the 2 points as well. However, it was not enough, as the Ravens held on for the 28-25 victory. Despite leading by 14, the Lions were unable to hold off the Texans' fourth quarter onslaught, in which they scored 15 unanswered points to sneak the victory 25-24. Before this though, the Lions' offense was firing on all cylinders, with Kane tossing 2 touchdowns and David Montgomery rushing for 117 yards and a touchdown of his own. Sam was back, throwing for 200 yards and a touchdown, as well as rushing for a touchdown, going down to the Bears 28-20. Despite Hamish's best efforts here, the Saints were never in this game, going down 31-23. Hamish did manage to throw 2 touchdowns, but he also threw an interception. Week 11, the losses continue for Hamish, this time at the hands of a refreshed Brooke after his bye week. The Browns outgained the Saints by almost double their yards, as Brooke tossed not 1, not 2, but 3 touchdowns, and Nick Chubb had 100 on the ground, whereas Hamish could only muster a single TD in the 31-10 loss. While Jordan Love couldn't get his revenge against the Packers, he still put the Lions in their place in a 31-24 win. It's not like Kane didn't show up. He threw 222 yards for 2 touchdowns and 0 picks. He even led the rushing attack with 55 yards, but the Jags were just too much for him today. The fact that he led the rushing yards might be a little indication of what went wrong here. Just a hunch. Rodgers might be gone. Love might be gone. But the Packers still own the Bears. Sure, it was only a 3-point victory in the 37-34 win, but hey, a win is a win. Tom threw 1 pick and 1 TD as Josh Jacobs torched the Bears for 3 touchdowns and 98 yards. Despite the late comeback, being shut out in the first half came back to bite the Patriots as they went down 31-17 to the Rams. Sam's 204 yards seems kind of minuscule when compared to Matthew Stafford's 330 yards for 3 touchdowns. Another close loss here for Brad, going down 30-27 to the Chargers. Both QBs tossed 2 tutties and neither threw a pick. Zach Moss and Justin Herbert scored the only rushing touchdowns for their respective teams. And McPherson and Dicker scored 2 field goals in the second half to take us to overtime, where, of course, the Chargers walked down the field and nailed the game-winning field goal. Week 12. When you throw for only 120 yards and 1 touchdown to 2 interceptions, you're not going to have a good time. And that's what happened to Brooke in his 24-7 loss to the Steelers. Kane's game against the Joe Flacco-led Colts was close. Of course it was. Joe Flacco, as we all know, is elite. 14 all heading into the fourth quarter, Kane had done a lot, having thrown a touchdown and also ran in the other touchdown. The Lions find themselves in the end zone, with time winding down, but are unable to convert on 4th and short. It looks like we're heading into overtime, but a scoop and score strip sack by Aiden Hutchinson gave the Lions the lead and eventual win. Rodgers might be gone, but the Packers still have issues against the 49ers. At least it wasn't in the playoffs this time. Tom threw 3 TDs, but a blocked field goal still had them behind by 1. And towards the end of the game, Tom threw a costly pick 6, sealing their fate. After his perfect game against the Pats last time, Tua had a much quieter time this week. He only threw 265 yards and a touchdown. Sam, on the other hand, did not have an easy time, taking 5 sacks, throwing for 164 yards and a touchdown, as the Patriots took the Dolphins to overtime. Sam, having won the coin toss, just like every other quarterback, made his way down the field, setting up a 33-yard field goal for Joey Sly, who proceeded to miss. Tua took this opportunity, made his way down the field, and a 21-yard rush from Devon Achane sealed the game for the Dolphins. Week 13, after the first half, we had a Justin Fields 40-yard rushing touchdown and a 55-yard Evan McPherson field goal. In the second half, we have a Chris Boswell field goal and a 10-3 win for the Steelers. I'm kidding, Brad fucking hates the Steelers and tossed 3 touchdowns in the 24-10 win. So the Broncos never led in this game. Brooke rushed in the first score of the game, and the Broncos could only muster a field goal. Then, Brooke throws a touchdown, and while Bo Nix also scores one, the Broncos are still trailing by 4. A couple field goals and another touchdown from Brooke, and the Browns win 27-10. This might not have been a good week for Kane, but it was probably worse for their kicker, Jake Bates. Kane could only throw 134 yards and an int, although he did score a rushing touchdown. Meanwhile, Bates did make a field goal, but missed not one, but both of the extra points. Didn't matter in the end though. Lions took down the Bears 15-13. Tom avenged Sam's loss last week with a 28-21 win over the Dolphins, in which he threw 2 touchdowns and rushed in a third. Now, Joe Flacco may be elite, but not being able to score any points in the second half isn't very elite, is it? Sam only needed to throw 1 touchdown in this 20-17 win over the Colts. Hell, even Hamish won this week, taking down the Rams 37-31 in overtime. The Saints gained almost 500 yards of offense in this game, including 146 yards rushing from Kamara and 313 passing yards from Hamish. And they nearly blew it too, giving up 10 points in the final quarter. It was only a last-minute field goal by Blake Grupe that gave them the chance to take it to overtime, where an absolute bomb to Rashid Shaheed from Hamish sealed the deal. Week 14. This game was the Bengals to lose. Brad had thrown 3 touchdowns, and the Bengals were leading by 14. So of course, Dak Prescott scored back-to-back touchdowns and forced overtime here. But come on, this is the Cowboys we're talking about. Dak is unable to convert on 4th down, and with the Bengals getting the ball back, they rushed their way down the field, and Evan McPherson kicks the winning field goal. After getting diddled by the Steelers last time, Brooke also managed to take the game into overtime. This included a Nick Chubb rushing touchdown, an int in the end zone followed by a safety from Zadarius Smith, a touchdown pass with a 2-point conversion, and another Nick Chubb rushing touchdown. Heading into the final quarter, both teams were on 24, but neither could find the end zone, both settling for a single field goal each. Brooke won the coin flip and made his way down the field, this time throwing a touchdown to lead the Browns to the overtime win. Tom needed some revenge, and he got it against Kane in their return game this week. While he didn't impress as much with the ball in the air, with 1 touchdown to 1 int, Tom rushed in an 8-yard touchdown, trucking through DJ Reader on his way to the end zone. Kane, meanwhile, only threw 1 touchdown, just like Tom, but his run game was completely shut down, leading to the 24-17 loss. The Saints won this game 18-14. Now let me read out some stats here. 133 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. You know, not the greatest showing here from Hamish, right? Well, that's not his stats. That was Daniel Jones' stats. Let me read out Hamish's stats for you, eh? 80 yards, no touchdowns, 2 sacks, and a completion rate under 50%. As it usually is in real life, Alvin Kamara led the way here. 109 yards rushing with a TD, alongside another Jamal Williams 1-yard special, carrying this team to a win. It was also at this point I'd like to point out the team was trailing 14-3 at one point. Week 15, the Mayonnaise Menace strikes back today with a 17-6 win over the Bengals. All the Bengals could muster were 2 field goals from Evan McPherson, and that was it. Meanwhile, Will Levis not only threw a touchdown, but rushed one in himself to secure that dub. And yet, despite that, Brooke easily had a much worse game against the Chiefs. Ignore Mahomes' stats of 85% completion rate, 4 touchdowns, no ints, and 254 passing yards. Brooke put up 172 yards, 50% completion, no touchdown, and 2 ints. If it wasn't for Nick Chubb and Donta Foreman scoring, this would have been a much worse loss than the 38-17 scoreline says. Buffalo started this game 14-0 up. The Lions won 24-17. 2 touchdowns from Kane, alongside an Abandakanda rushing touchdown, powered the Lions to another victory here. 2 touchdowns in the air, a Marshawn Lloyd rush converted for 2, and a couple of field goals led to yet another Tom victory, this time against the Seahawks 28-14. Sam put up 2 touchdowns and 1 interception against Kyler Murray, who couldn't achieve either of those in a 24-16 victory. Another game for the kickers here, as Hamish and the Saints could only muster a single touchdown all game, and still won 22-19. Week 16, Brooke had his revenge game this week against Brad, with a 31-21 victory. This match went from extreme to extreme. Brooke and the Browns took a 21-point lead just before the end of the half, before Brad answered back with 21 points of his own. Nick Chubb rushed in a touchdown, leaving a few minutes left for Brad to do something, only managing to throw an interception. This led to a field goal and the end of the game. Brooke went 261 yards for 3 touchdowns and an int, whereas Brad went for 222 yards, 1 touchdown, and the aforementioned interception, along with a 6-yard touchdown run. And this goes out to Hamish. Donta Foreman had a 2-yard rushing TD and finished the game on 0 rushing yards after a loss of 3 on his final attempt. 2 touchdowns to Kane with no picks helped him and the Lions serve the Bears another loss after they were trailing 14-0 at halftime. The Pats defense limited Josh Allen to only 1 touchdown, and the Patriots still lost 25-11. Aside from the 3 field goals, the only other score was a safety on Josh Allen, whereas James Cook rushed in twice for the Bills. After having some big wins during the season, Tom was taken down by Hamish's Saints 27-23. The Packers had more rushing yards, receiving yards, and even kick return yards, but Tom was unable to throw any touchdowns compared to Hamish's 2. And while both Josh Jacobs and AJ Dillon scored rushing touchdowns, Jamal did what Jamal did best, scoring a rushing touchdown from the 2-yard line. Week 17, Zach Moss scored twice, Chase Brown once, and Brad tossed a touchdown to lead the Bengals to a 31-25 win. Despite Bo Nix's best efforts, this second Moss TD in the 4th sealed their fate. Brooke and the Browns were relentless during this game against the Dolphins. They scored a touchdown in each of the quarters, with Nick Chubb scoring 2 and Jerome Ford scoring 1 himself, plus a passing touchdown from Brooke and 2 field goals from Dustin Hopkins led to a 34-point game. In a high-scoring shootout, it came down to a 57 field goal from Jake Bates. Nail it, and the Lions win. Miss, and we're heading to overtime. Before this moment, both QBs were very efficient, tossing 4 touchdowns for 250 plus yards each and no ints. Alongside this, David Montgomery and CMC both scored rushing touchdowns, leaving both teams on 35 points. Anyway, the kick is up, and the kick is good. The Lions win. Meanwhile, While Kane won this week, Tom could not. This time going down to the Vikings 23-17. Tom never threw a touchdown, and fumbles from both Romeo Doubs and Jaden Reed led the Vikings recovering the ball. And while both of these fumbles only resulted in a field goal, those 6 points were the difference between the two teams. Not even a pick six from Trev could lead the Packers to the victory. A late 10-point quarter from Sam, including an 82-yard bomb for a touchdown, led the Patriots to overtime. Unfortunately, Sam threw his first interception of the game, and Justin Herbert made him paid, tossing his third touchdown for the game to clinch the win. For the first half, this game was somewhat close. Hamish and Minshew both had 2 TDs to their names, and the score was 14-all. Just before the half ended though, Minshew snuck in a last-minute TD to make it 21-14. And from this point, the Raiders never lost the lead again. One of the things that probably didn't help the Saints at this point is that Hamish gave up 8 sacks in the game. 8. Bro probably has the Tua mush brain at this point. Heading into week 18, I thought I might update you guys on the playoffs. At this point, Tom and Kane have both clinched playoff spots, whereas Sam, Brooke and Hamish have all been eliminated. Brad, the final Doiz, was still competing for a spot. This is where Brooke comes into play. You see, currently, the Ravens are leading the AFC North at 8-8. The Bengals, they're also 8-8. They've split the head-to-head series 1-all, and are both 3-2 within the division, as well as in common games. However, the Ravens' 55 win rate in the AFC is much higher than the Bengals' 36%. This means that the only way that Brad could get into the playoffs is if they beat the Steelers and Brooke is able to defeat the Ravens. So, let's see how the games went. Week 18. First up, Kane thrashed the Vikings, throwing 4 touchdowns in a 35-16 victory. Aaron Rodgers might be gone. Jordan Love might be gone. I know I've already done this bit already, but the Bears still can't beat the Packers, going down 38-17. Tom also threw 4 touchdowns during this game, with a better completion rating than Kane. Sam and the Patriots were moments away from ending the season with a win, but Josh Allen threw a last-minute touchdown pass, leading to a 31-28 win for the Bills. Just like their first game, Hamish versus the Bucks was a total snooze fest. However, in the final minutes, Jamal Williams scored a last-minute touchdown, and all Hamish needed to do was to make the 2-point conversion. Unfortunately, this is dropped by wide receiver Bub Means. I don't know why the fuck Bub Means is out there, or why Hamish shows his hands to catch the ball, but here we are. Buccaneers win. For 3 quarters, this wasn't a battle between Fields and Brad. This was a battle between Boswell and McPherson. And after stopping the Steelers from scoring their first TD, Brad and the Bengals made their way down the field. Brad sends up a deep ball, and it lands in the hands of one T. Higgins for the walk-off TD and the win. So now all eyes are on Brooke for his game against the Ravens. Brooke threw 3 touchdowns and 269 yards. Nice. But he also threw 2 picks, the second one going for 7 points, after not 1, but 2 fourth down conversions from Lamar. Worst of all, with an injury to Dustin Hopkins, Cade York was kicking during this game, and with the game on the line, he did what he does best, missing a 38-yard field goal. Thankfully, Justin Tucker's field goal was blocked, and we went into overtime. Browns began with the ball, but stalled out as usual. This set up a 46-yard field goal for Cade York. Could he be the hero that the Bengals needed? You're damn fucking right. The Browns win, and the Bengals are through to the playoffs. The wild card. Unfortunately for the Bengals, their wildcard game was against the Chiefs, and if you have seen any Bengals-Chiefs game recently, you know how that ends. Brad threw 2 touchdowns, as well as Zach Moss running in a touchdown, which was converted for 2 points. And the scores were all tied up with 30 seconds to play. However, any Bills fan knows how this game is going to end. Mahomes throws the ball to Rashee Rice. Mahomes throws the ball to Xavier Worthy. Mahomes throws the ball to Rashee Rice again for a 45-yard touchdown, his 5th touchdown pass of the game, and the victory for the Chiefs. On the other hand, Tom was taking on Kane, so I knew at least one of the Doiz would make it to the divisional playoffs. And let's just say from this game, the play from the two quarterbacks couldn't have been any different. Tom put up 162 yards, no touchdowns and a pick, whereas Kane put up 219, 4 touchdowns and no picks. You wouldn't have actually realised that this was a close game looking at the end of the score, but at half-time it was 21-all. But while Green Bay were unable to score, Kane threw 2 of his 4 touchdowns, they kicked a field goal, and even sacked Tom for a safety, winning 40-21. The divisional series. So, Kane is our last hope, taking on the Vikings. Let's see how this game went, eh? The Vikings took an early lead, 14-3 at the half, with Trev tossing a couple of touchdowns. In the second half, Kane tossed a touchdown and Jahmyr Gibbs rushed and won 2. However, the extra point was missed. Despite this though, they still led 16-14. However, he may not be a Packer anymore, but he was still out for revenge. 48-yard rush from Aaron Jones ended in 6, sealing the fate of the Lions, eliminating them, and our final Doi had been eliminated. Because I know you're probably wondering what happened in the Super Bowl, you'll never guess, but the Chiefs completed their three-peat with Mahomes not only winning MVP, but also Super Bowl MVP. Rashee Rice won Offensive Player of the Year. However, Rookie of the Year went to a Doi, and it was Tom. Now, this first year had been completely unsuccessful, but that's okay. It was our rookie year. So from now on, after their rookie year's all done, I'll just sim to the playoffs, just to speed things up a bit. 2025. So both Kane and Tom made the playoff again. In good news, Tom breaks the Green Bay curse and manages to defeat the 49ers 28-13. Kane needs to go to overtime, but is able to overcome the Falcons 23-20. In even better news, they are not matched up against each other in the divisional round, so we have potential to see them in the championship round. Neither of them make it. Kane loses to the Cowboys 23-17, and Tom to the Eagles 24-21. The Jags win their first Super Bowl, with Josh Hines-Allen getting Super Bowl MVP, Dak getting the regular MVP, as well as Offensive Player of the Year, and Mike McCarthy getting Coach of the Year. 2026. After 2 years of missed playoffs, Sam has been benched for Drake May. Don't worry, the Patriots still miss the playoffs. As do the Saints and Bengals, despite Brad leading the league in touchdowns and is third in the league in yards. The Browns, Lions and Packers all make it though, and proceed to lose all of their games. Kane loses to the Vikings again, 24-17, only throwing 1 touchdown pass. The Falcons beat Tom 31-17, with both Tom and Michael Penix Jr. throwing 1 touchdown to 2 ints. The Super Bowl champion Jags defeat the Browns 24-6, with Brooke's only score coming from field goals. The fucking Chiefs win it again. Mahomes is MVP and Super Bowl MVP again, but this time Nico Collins wins Offensive Player of the Year, and the Packers' Rashan Gary wins Defensive Player of the Year. 2027. We have another benching, with Hamish being benched for Bo Nix. The Bengals fired coach Zach Taylor now, making my job of collecting stats a little bit harder now. Only Tom makes the playoffs, and he actually wins his first game, defeating the Desmond Ridder-led Seahawks 28-24, thanks to 15 unanswered points in the fourth quarter. Tom threw 3 TDs, but also 1 int. He then defeated the Bryce Young-led Panthers 31-24 in overtime. After scoring 14 in the first, the Packers wait until the fourth to score again. They then receive the kick in overtime, manage to score, and then finally stop Bryce Young to get to the championship. Tom went nearly 300 yards for 3 TDs and no ints, but was taken down by the Nick Christie Giants 31-29. No shame in this though, as this Giants team, after defeating the Packers, go on to defeat the Chiefs, fucking them again, and win the Super Bowl. Of course, Mahomes still wins MVP, but Bobby Okereke wins the Super Bowl MVP And we have another Offensive Player of the Year award for Nico Collins. 2028. Somehow, Deshaun Watson ends up on the Bengals. So, to make sure that he doesn't make it to the field, Brad throws for a league-leading 4,429 yards. Unfortunately, both Sam and Hamish are now out of the league. Being spurred on by having Deshaun Watson behind him also leads Brad and the Bengals to the playoffs. However, in heartbreaking fashion, the Bengals lose 21-20 after a Ravens touchdown and a scoreless fourth quarter. 2029? Getting sick of Deshaun Watson being on his team, Brad signs with the Cleveland Browns? He does miss 5 games due to injury, but still puts up good stats. Brooke, being replaced by Brad, ends up signing with the Raiders. Meanwhile, Kane is out of the league. No teams make the playoffs. 2030. Brad, Brooke, and Tom are now all out of the league, and everyone's careers are now over. So, let's see what everyone's stats look like over their career. Brad was a consistent yards machine, going for 4,000 yards in 3 of his 6 seasons. Also to mention, in his rookie season, he went for 3,999 yards. So basically 4,000 yards in 4 of his 6 seasons. He also had the most touchdowns thrown, just beating out Tom, and a relatively low interception count for how long he'd played for. As expected, he also had the lowest longest run, but a respectable 1,300 rushing yards in his career. Brooke was the only quarterback to have a quarterback rating under 100 and not get benched. His first 2 seasons had a very poor interception to touchdown ratio, but he improved on that in his later seasons. Also randomly hitting 4,000 passing yards in his 4th season. Despite having middling rushing stats and preferring to stay in the pocket, he accrued almost 3,000 rushing yards over 6 seasons. This meant that he had the most rushing yards out of the 6 Doiz, and also somehow the longest QB rush. Kane was a solid quarterback, but his numbers were rather low for his standards. He never threw over 3,500 yards in a season, but he also kept his interception numbers low, with only 1 season being in double digits. Alongside this, he also kept his sack total rather low, whilst also keeping his yards per average at a solid 8. Tom didn't need to throw for 4,000 yards to be a good quarterback. He balanced his passing yards with his running backs to form a juggernaut team that reached the playoff in 4 consecutive years. This was made even harder by the fact that he was sharing a division with Kane, another great quarterback. His 193 touchdowns is only second to Brad's 197, but factoring in his rushing touchdowns, he was the quarterback with the most touchdowns, with a total of 205. I also have to mention, he reached 2,000 rushing yards over his 6 years at quarterback. Sam was not a good scheme fit for the Patriots. As I mentioned at the start of the video, he's a quarterback who loves to run. But over his 2 years as the Patriots quarterback, he only had 172 rushing attempts for 868 yards. That just doesn't make sense. His rushing ability should have made up for his lower yardage, but the Patriots just did not let him run. And instead of changing their plays to suit Sam, he was just benched and treated as a scapegoat for the Patriots' lack of playoff success. Hamish probably has CTE after his 3 years in the NFL. 119 sacks over 3 years is David Carr worthy, and that would have helped contribute to his lower yardage. His final season, however, he seemed to finally get a grip on things. Nearly 4,000 yards passing, over 30 touchdowns thrown, and he basically halved his sack count. But that wasn't enough, as he was tossed away for the new toy of Bo Nix. So yeah, at the end of things, I was kinda bummed. I was really hoping one of us could win a Super Bowl, but none of us could even reach one. So, obviously, I just, did what any normal person would do. I did it all again, until one of us finally could reach the Super Bowl. And thankfully, it only took 2 years. But we finally had a team in the Super Bowl, as the Green Bay Packers take on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Will Tom be able to take home the Super Bowl on his first trip there? So, that proves it. Tom would be the best Doi to lead any team to the Super Bowl. Sure, his team might have been stacked and been young and had a lot of playmakers and had a good defense. But if you have a bad quarterback, that can just all fall to pieces. Anyway, I've been Brooke, and thank you for watching this lengthy video. I assume it's going to be lengthy because I'm nearly at 1.5 hours of recording. My voice is starting to go, and I'll see you guys next Tuesday for Madden 24 Highlights, Episode 48, PA Crosses. Bye guys.